Martin, has Arteta's January roll of the dice with his squad backfired? And by that I mean this. 6 players were shipped out. Aubameyang, Maitland-Niles, Balogun, Kolasinac, Pablo Mari, Callum Chambers. And Arsenal didn't bring anybody in. Now we've seen that Kieran Tierney gone for the rest of the season. Thomas Partey injured. What's going on here?
Well, of course, the squad is bare. And I think we've always known that. We've always known that the 11 that makes it to the pitch, it can do a job. Whether it can make it to top 4, I did actually say, and people were astounded by that when Arsenal beat Villa, that I still saw Spurs as the favourites to get into that top 4. That hasn't really changed for me. Not because I'm not an Arsenal fan. Of course I am. I'm just being as realistic as I possibly can. And I think Aubameyang leaving was a little bit like Harry Kane going. Now you're going to say, okay, he didn't perform in those last 6 months. Obviously, there's a joint effort for the manager to get the best from the player. He's now gone to Barcelona and he's playing exceptionally well, scoring bags fulls of goals. He's just left Arsenal a little bit bare. That doesn't mean that Arsenal won't make it into the top 4. There's still a really good opportunity. But this weekend, you've got to bounce back against Brighton. And let's see if they got it. And they've got it in the group to achieve that. That's what they're up against, Jim. It's tough. There's still that game to come against Spurs. The fixture list for Arsenal looks tricky. But they've got to show some character and personality. Yeah. And that's what I asked for. I was disappointed the other night. I must say, I can't remember watching.
What happened the other night against Crystal Palace? Because not only were they beaten, they were well beaten.
I think you saw in Patrick Vieira, he's now got his personality into his team. They're street fighters, Jim, and they were winning every battle all over the pitch. In those opening exchanges, Arsenal were coming off second best. And I think sometimes with the young players, you can't, I look then, that's when I do look at the Xhakas. And people are going to say, oh, yeah, and if he's listening, he's probably thinking, here he goes again. No, I want you to be that waving a fist at people in those first 10 or 15 minutes, not the last 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. Because I think it's when you look to your senior players, it's so cold when you go to Selhurst Park now. It's really difficult atmosphere environment. Yeah. You've got to be up for it from the start. Arsenal didn't start quick enough. And Palace, fair to them, were a different class on the night.
Let me put you in the spot then. And sometimes it's unfair to single out a player, but do you know what? I'm going to single out a player. Nuno Tavares, is he good enough? Now, he started 2 games this year and hasn't made it out for the second half on both occasions. What does that tell you, Martin? Is he good enough to be wearing the Arsenal shirt?
Well, he probably isn't, Jim. But, if you think if that was your boy out there, I mean, when he was taken off, 25 minutes against Forest, I thought that was a little bit... I would never have seen Wenger do that. He would have always waited to the halfway for the half time or given him 5 minutes into the second half. This week, it was the first half he was taken off. We've got to find Arsenal, call it we now, a solution to the left-back problem. I would like to see Saka go to left-back. I know that's radical, but I'd rather see that than Xhaka there, who's going to get exposed. I cannot believe that Zaha did not immediately go across to that side of the pitch to start the second half. Patrick Vieira
but where's the logic
probably
in that?
Feeling sorry.
You take your top goal scorer and put him at left-back.
Because it's about the best 11. And if you're creating such a weakness in the team, then you've got to fill it. And I think Saka could go to left-back and still do damage from the left. Pepe back onto the right-hand side, Martinelli on the left. There's the players that are there. It's about the best 11. But if you've got an issue with a player to such an extent that everything's going down that side, mistakes are being made, and you don't believe in the player, then you can't play him. And that's what so I go, okay, we're not going to play Tavares, but I don't think Xhaka is the answer. He certainly isn't. They'll be setting teams out to exploit that weakness. It won't be long before Xhaka's off the pitch and Arsenal are down to 10 men again. Play Saka there.
So as brutal as it sounds, Tavares, you wouldn't play him again if you were Arteta anytime soon?
I wouldn't say I'm not going to play him ever again. I just feel that there's a development that's needed in the player that's not right there right now. There are weaknesses in his game that need to be resolved. Whether he's good enough in the future is another matter. Lokonga as well in midfield, is he good enough? There are real question marks, and Arsenal are pretty short at the moment. Jim, if you compare back to the squads that we were in back in the day, we went to Old Trafford, we won the league with Canu and Wiltord starting. No Henry, no Bergkamp. At the moment, they've got Lacazette to choose from. So you can see that they're short. And because of that, I think they're doing remarkably well to turn it round. But are the players good enough to do it? Only they can decide that.
But, I mean, again, Simon, Mikel's kind of brought this upon himself because he opted not to bring anybody in. Maybe they tried, maybe they didn't, but they didn't bring anybody in. But out went Aubameyang, Maitland-Niles, Balogun, Kolasinac, Pablo Mari, Callum Chambers. He's reaping what he sowed.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, in the game against Crystal Palace did to Arsenal what they did to Manchester City, in terms of making it very hard for teams that think they can beat Palace to play in the way that they want to. I think it's much more difficult for Palace when they play against sides that don't necessarily think they can beat Palace and deny them space. But in this instance, Palace were very offensive and very on the front foot against Man City in the first 15-20 against Arsenal, and were very similar against Man City, both home and away. I think you've got to take these games in individual measure. Up until that point, Arsenal were going very well. There's been a lot of disputes about Tavares, about how good a player he thinks he is against how good a player he actually is, because he was a very confident young man that came on the show about 5, 6, 7 weeks ago.
Right.
Maybe a little bit longer than that.
Yeah.
And then he played against Liverpool, didn't he? And he got exposed in that particular game. I suppose the only way to get a player to a certain level is to give them the opportunity to play and coach him and get him to a point where he's the player that you thought he was going to be when you first signed him. Look, I mean, Arsenal are in a good position, and they are still retain a good position. The result against Crystal Palace will happen against teams like Crystal Palace, because Man City took 1 point of Palace this season. Palace have beaten Man City repeatedly over the last 4 or 5 years. Good teams that play against Palace, that want to play on the front foot, will find themselves in trouble, and Arsenal came a cropper. In the second half, to be fair, Arsenal had plenty of opportunity to get back in that game. They just weren't particularly good at, finishing off some of the moves that they created for themselves.
It was a bad night for far too many players. But when you don't have Tierney suddenly, and you don't have Partey, it's like losing a game. They're so reliant on their first 11, and that's where the strength and depth needs to improve, and I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will do, but top four it'd be nice actually if we could make it into the top four, because I think it really transforms the club again, Jim, into that other level.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Thursday morning 10 till 1 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.